Today I'm going to rank every single epic commander in Rise of Kingdoms and rate how good they are, both for player versus player combat and also for Sunset Canyon. And what qualifies me to give this guidance? Well, I've been playing Rise of Kingdoms for over 1,500 days. I've collected the overwhelming majority of legendary and epic commanders that are in the game and used them to accumulate 16 billion kill points. So stick around in this video for all the things you need to know about which epic you should go invest in next, and how strong they actually are. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and if you're here at the channel for the very first time, I make daily Rise of Kingdoms videos designed to help you get value and smash your enemies. And I have updated this epic tier list every single year when a new epic commander lands in the game. The last epic commander that we had gotten was Emotep, and very recently we got Pericles, brand new into Rise of Kingdoms. So in this video, I'm going to rank them all, starting with how they perform against other players, and then finishing with how they perform in Canyon. Now, if you haven't actually unlocked Sunset Canyon yet, don't worry about it. You'll see it soon enough. But before I dive into all the details around how these guys actually rank, there's a couple things that are very dramatic that have changed the relevance of epic commanders in Rise of Kingdoms. Now, the two things that have changed that dramatically shift the relevance of epic commanders in Rise of Kingdoms is that, first of all, you gain access to endgame commanders sooner. These legendary commanders that are endgame are going to so dramatically overpower anything that any epic can do. It is absurd. This means that the time horizon in which you're going to use these epic commanders has shrunk dramatically. And the second thing, well, let me just show you in game. Once you get to KVK, that's Kingdom versus Kingdom, for your third season, you're going to get a building called the Museum. And this museum lets you put very powerful buffs onto the sort of original legendary commanders that are in the game. So I'm showing this to you to illustrate that, yeah, you can max some epic commanders at the start of the game, but they are going to be so dramatically outclassed by legendaries. The usable life of epic commanders has shrunk dramatically. Not only do you get in-game commanders faster, but you get this museum sooner also, and that comes again in KVK Season 3 now, I believe, which means that you have a much smaller number of epic commander investments you'll get to make before they stop being relevant to you. But which ones should you make? Now we go back to the tier list, and that gives you the context of why I'm going to be really brutal in selecting which ones are actually the best. All right, with all that context and ceremony out of the way, there's really only a couple epics you get to max and enjoy before they really become irrelevant. And I think the easy, strong answer for probably the best epic on the board is actually going to be Sun Tzu. The reason that I'm going to recommend Sun Tzu as the strongest epic at this moment in time is that he's so versatile, and that's very important given that the lifetime of these epic commanders has shrunk. He can defend your city wall, you can use him in the open field, he doesn't even care all that much about being with infantry, so you can technically pair him with other troop types, although obviously infantry is better. And he helps generate rage, which is really valuable. Sun Tzu is one of the tried and true epic commanders, and at this moment in time in Rise of Kingdoms, your starting civilization should be China. I covered that in a separate video. I'll have a card for that in the end screen around the best civilizations. But you'll already be getting more sculptures of Sun Tzu, so that should be your first and strongest invest. Now from here, you have some kind of interesting choices. One of the strongest epics that you'll kind of be using for a long time, potentially even after Sun Tzu has been sunset, is going to be Joan of Arc. And I'm going to put her at the S tier. Now, what does Joan of Arc do? She does a buff effect for her march and 4 other nearby marches. Now, if those marches are your marches, they will be prioritized. However, if you don't have 4 other marches nearby, then that buff will randomly sort of be applied to some of your other allies that are nearby. If you are bringing at least 3 marches in the open field, but more likely if you're bringing 4 or 5, Joan of Arc absolutely should be in that mix. The buff that she gives generates rage for the march, which is how your powerful active skills get used. Also, she's giving a bunch of stats. She does a little heal, and she boosts the normal attack damage, which is the damage you deal directly to the thing you're targeting, and also to the things that target you. So Joan of Arc is an exceptional S tier epic commander. Now, as I look at this list, it is kind of interesting to see who else goes near the top and how we break it down. But there are a couple things that we know will not be near the top of this list. The first is Lohar. Lohar is amazing for generating experience onto some other commander that you pair with him. But he's only for battling barbarians, not even barbarian forts, and this is a player versus player combat list. He doesn't go anywhere near the top. And similarly, we're just going to take gathering commanders and scoot them out of here because unlike Joan of Arc, these gathering commanders do not have a combat application. Okay, so those two epic commanders are moved out of here. From there, we can start to look at this list, and it's a bit more narrow. One commander I want to put in the C category is going to be Boudica. Now, Boudica is extraordinarily versatile, and she's actually pretty good, but she's a glass cannon, okay? She doesn't care about what troop type you use with her, but you're going to want to use her as the secondary commander. And genuinely, she is good, but I just find that all the commanders that have defense will be favorable to you, and I'll show you a bunch of those commanders in just a minute. In addition, a commander that I'm going to put probably a step above Boudica is going to be Kira. And we're going sort of from the bottom here with like commanders that are a little weird or hard to access. Kira is only available from an event called Soroli. And once you actually are able to complete Soroli Crisis, you'll start to get some of her sculptures. By the time you have her maxed, she's not going to be relevant to you anymore, which is a little bit weird. She has a really interesting effect on her 4th skill, amplifying the skill damage that your march deals. But I just don't think she's as strong as some of the other epics we're going to talk about. And for some reason, Diao-Chan over here has an orange background, but we're also going to drop her down in the C category of strength. Diao-Chan is a weird one, and she's not even really available in the game anymore, so new players actually can't access her. She was a part of a crossover event with the legendary Lu Bu and the epic Diao-Chan. And the two of them have an interesting synergy together, but like pairing an epic and a legendary is not an endgame strategy. So the fact that the epic and the legendary have synergy and that it's not that strong of a synergy, those two commanders are basically irrelevant. So we're going to keep them at C, and they're honestly not obtainable and not relevant to you. Okay, from here, which commanders do we add? Well, we really kind of need to talk about Baibars. And Baibars does something really interesting, and it's so interesting that I actually want to bump him up to the S tier, which feels a little crazy, but let me explain. You see, most commanders that do area of effect damage have the amount of damage that they deal diminish when you hit multiple targets. That's because if you just straight up get more damage for hitting more targets, area of effect damage gets really out of hand. So what the developers do is that a lot of commanders will say, for each additional target beyond the first, the amount of damage you deal drops by 15%. That makes it so that it's not absolutely insane to do area of effect damage, although it's still really, really good. You're getting more total damage, and it's just spread out a bunch between a bunch of targets. But what Baibars does is he deals that area of effect damage, and it doesn't diminish for hitting multiple targets. And that is really powerful. So I'm going to bump him up to the S tier. That is an upgrade from the last time I had him on this list. But he's actually super strong, and he's got some solid stats that go with him. Now, from here, it's kind of weird to put Belisarius at A, and I'm probably going to bump him down later as we put more commanders into this list. But Belisarius does something interesting. He not only is a commander that has a lot of mobility, he has 30% defense, which is really good, and also his skills are kind of powerful. His 4th skill does an extra damage effect, which is really, really strong. I think that he is pretty powerful. We'll leave him at A for now, but I might bump him around. I'll also include at A, Bjorn Ironside. Now, Bjorn Ironside is strong for a couple reasons. First of all, he has what's called instant proc damage. On one of his skills, he's got a chance to deal something like 800 damage factor, and that's really cool. Like if you tussle with an enemy and you're not even firing off your active skills, you can have this instant trigger damage go and reduce the enemy's strength. And even if, again, you back away before active skills are used, you still got in a nice chunk of damage because of that instant proc. And by the way, damage in this game is based in part on how many troops are left in your march. So reducing the number of troops in an enemy's march instantly before active skills are even used is really powerful. But in addition to that, Bjorn Ironside has an area of effect debuff, making targets take additional skill damage. It's not much, it's like 15%, but it's pretty cool. I'm going to leave him at A quality. From here, I've got someone I want to put into B quality, and I might bump them down, but it's Olgi Mundok. Now, Olgi Mundok is a garrison commander, so one of his skills is committed to defending cities, which means he doesn't have that many that are actually relevant in open field fighting. And this is sort of true for every commander in this list, is they've got one skill that's not actually helping them in the open field, which is a part of the reason why, like, again, epic power level is just not pushed all that much. However, Olgi Mundok on his 4th skill does something really unique. He increases his damage dealt by 100% for 1 turn. Now that happens when there's players attacking you, and there's a 10% chance for each player hitting you that you'll boost your damage on the next turn by 100%. Now, I actually reached out to support about this skill because when you think about 100% damage boost, I don't know if that sounds as busted to you as it does to me, but I've been playing this game for 1,500 days. Consider subscribing, by the way, if you're getting value from this video, and throw a like on the video. But I've been playing for 1,500 days, and 100% damage on 1 turn is insane. And that's so strong that, you know, in the end game, there's these special KVK formats where you can take skills from one commander and put them onto another one. And I actually thought that that skill was so powerful, I might use it over other legendary commander skills. The long story short here is that I reached out to support, and even though Olgi Mundok's 4th skill doesn't list an internal cooldown, there actually is something like a 3 to 5 second internal cooldown. So unfortunately, that skill is really powerful, but can only trigger like once every 3 or 5 seconds. I don't remember what the number is. So we're going to put him at a B. He's interesting for defending your city, especially if your city gets swarmed. He has a defense reduction on his active skill, which is really nice, but we're going to keep him at B for now. We're going to put up at A, Herman. Now, Herman does single target damage, but he's actually a really interesting open field commander. He generates rage. He is, I think, doing either a silence or a rage reduction effect, which is also really powerful. And he's got march speed, which is something you want. Like, he's actually a really cool secondary for an archer march. He could also be a primary, I suppose, but you'll want to move into legendaries pretty quickly. So I actually think Herman's kit is ultra balanced, and I'm going to put him at the A quality. In addition, gosh, this commander is really interesting. Osman, okay? You can do some really crazy stuff with Osman. He's got one of his skills that makes it so that whenever you use an active skill, you do 400 damage factor. Well, okay, if you can generate a lot of rage and use active skills really frequently, that's a lot of damage factor that ends up firing out. It's 800 per skill cycle. So the primary commander uses their active skill, Osman does damage. The secondary commander uses their active skill, Osman does damage again. He's pretty much a glass cannon. I don't think he has any tanky stats, but you can really kind of break that skill, especially not that Khan is a particularly good legendary commander, but, you know, the legendary commanders that have a reduced rage requirement do some really weird stuff, or the ones that generate a lot of rage. You can actually crank a very meaningful amount of damage, all right? Now, from here, for player versus player combat, we're going to put Skippy down at the C tier. And tanking is not really a thing in Rise of Kingdoms, but Skippy is a very tanky commander. And the thing about Skippy is that he will reduce the damage you take and elevate your counterattack. He does some interesting stuff when he gets low, but you're trying to get away from combat when your marches are getting low and refresh because your trades get the worst at that point. I think he is best served in Canyon, where he can be an interesting tanky frontliner. But for open field combat, he's just kind of a sitting duck, and he's a prickly one, but not one that I think you want to use, okay? Now from here, this is an interesting choice, and I struggle with Emotep a lot, actually. Emotep has an area of effect ability that is really, really powerful, making targets take more damage. And that's really good. However, he doesn't really have a lot of synergy with the legendary commander I want you to use for archers in the early game, and that's Esong. Like, if you're going to use a legendary, you want another commander that's going to do skill damage to pair with Esong. And I suppose you could put him with El Cid, and like that would be kind of an interesting combo potentially, but The issue with Emotep is that his power level's there, but there's not actually a good partner for him. So his power level, sort of in a bubble, is really, really good, but otherwise he's not all that exciting. The other thing that Emotep does, by the way, is he reduces the rage of nearby enemies, and rage reduction effects in this game are extremely powerful. I'll just give you the short version of why that is, but the sort of short version of that is that the way this game calculates when you use active skills is you do all the math for ways you generate rage, and then all the rage you generate is reduced to 220 at a maximum. And that's because that's the most you can generate in one turn. The game has a cap built in. And then after that, rage reductions apply. So rage reductions are really brutal. I think Emotep's really interesting, but again, he just doesn't have a great commander to pair him with to make him sort of pop off. And there aren't as many fights, I feel, in early, kingdom versus kingdom battles where the entire battle you're like debuffing all these guys nearby you. I think he's really good in Canyon, but I think his power level's really pushed. All right. Now from here, a couple other commanders. Where do we put them? First of all, I'm going to put Pelagius in C. And Pelagius is kind of weird. His kit actually overall looks balanced. He does damage, he generates rage, he has a heal. But remember I talked about just a second ago that rage calculates all the ways you gain rage, and then you drop down to 220. So even if you generate infinite rage in one turn, you'd still be capped at 220, right? Well, Pelagius's active skill generates rage. That's a bad thing in this instance, because the overwhelming majority of primary commanders you're going to pair him with will already have plenty of ways to generate rage, and his will be excessive. So I think he drops down to C. I mean, if you're going to be working with a cavalry, I think Baibars is just a way more interesting choice anyways. Pelagius is not where it is. It's just not where it's at, okay? Now, Kusunoki's a weird one. Kusunoki goes at B. And Kusunoki does area of effect damage. He's got attack and defense. He's got instant proc damage over time, which is nice. So 10% chance that you do damage for like 2 seconds. I think it's like 450 factor per second or something like that. But he also removes all debuffs from your march. He's actually super interesting, but he doesn't have march speed. And you'll just have to trust me that you are going to find march speed to be absolutely god tier in the open field, okay? And this brings us to the new epic commander, Pericles. Now, before we rank Pericles, let's just review his kit together again, because he did just land in the game, all right? So if we jump back in game over here, and we go to my commander list, we drop all the way down since I haven't leveled him up yet, and I don't know that I really need to. Pericles does a couple things. First of all, he gives you a shield and gives you march speed, 20%. He also gives you attack and defense. He's got an ability for making your city deal more damage. And in this regard, yo, let me tell you, for an epic, 10% all damage for your city garrison is actually insane. That's actually better than almost any skill on an epic commander. Remember I told you earlier that Sun Tzu is really nutty, right? I suppose that Sun Tzu's garrison skill is not all that strong. What does his garrison do? 7% damage taken reduction. Okay, well, 10% damage dealt is obviously better than that. But also he's got a 10% damage reduction over here, which is really, I'm telling you, damage reduction effects are way better than stats. Way better than stats. So anytime you see damage dealt, you think twice as good as an attack stat. And that tells you just how strong that is. So this is actually really wicked for defending your city, right? But the thing is that, okay, pretty quickly you'll use legendary commanders for defending your city anyways. See the problem here? And then finally, whenever this commander's troop is hit with a normal attack, it has a chance to reduce the troop's normal attack damage. And the expertise skill, when you max everything, makes his shield stronger on his active skill. And the shield also increases the healing their troop receives by 15% and the march speed of the infantry. Well, I don't know. I mean, how much healing are you even receiving? Do you even... I guess if you pair with like Richard I, you've got a legendary that's doing healing, but I don't think people should work on Richard I anymore, right? So if we make our way back to the epic tier list now, with all that context, like where does he go? I mean, right, like if you paired him with Richard I, he'd be really interesting. You got a really shieldy, healing, tanky sort of a thing. But like, he doesn't actually have inherent march speed. He's not all that exciting to me. Like, yeah, you're getting march speed on your active skill school. He's got a shield. Honestly, I'm tempted to just bump him down to B and put him in the front. I just think for open field combat, he's just not all that exciting. For defending your city, hey, yeah, he's good. For sure. For sure he's good. No doubt about it. But, you know, it's weird. You've got this garrison commander designed for defending your city, and his active skills giving you march speed. That's not relevant to defending your city. It's like punching power on this commander has been allocated to the wrong things. It's all over the place. So I'm going to put him at a B for now. And this is the epic commander tier list, all right, for open field combat. But if we want to do this again, and we want to say, hey, how does this look for Canyon? How does this list change around? And actually, I'll be honest, in a lot of ways, I feel like we kind of nailed a bunch of these things. But for Canyon, I'm going to make a few changes over here and move commanders around, all right? So I'm going to put the single target damage of Belisarius down a tier. Herman single target damage, I'm going to move down a tier. I'm going to put Skippy with his tankiness up several tiers, okay? I'm also going to put Kusunoki with his area of effect damage up a tier. All right, I like that choice a lot. I'm going to move Osman around a little bit. In fact, because Osman does single target damage, I'm going to move him down. Yes, he lets you bring more troops. That's very interesting, but not as strong as it ought to be. And there is sort of a weirdness here, okay? It's the weirdest thing you've ever seen, but there's an entire strategy committed to making siege work in Canyon. And I have made dedicated videos about how you can make siege work in Canyon. And it's the weirdest thing ever. However, it's super legit. And I'll have a video, okay, card will be in the end screen, covering in depth how the heck it is that you make siege work in Canyon. But I'm telling you, Matilda is like solidly a B quality commander because you can do that. It's super weird. Matilda makes it work, man. And if we look at the commanders that I have at the top of the list, I actually think they don't change around that much. I do think that Baibars bumps down just a little bit, and I'd probably put him over there, but his area of effect damage is very good. I think that probably is what it looks like. And again, the only commander that I might have overrated for PvP is kind of Emotep. And again, I'll just show you in game really quickly why I feel like his kit's really interesting, but doesn't quite cut it, okay? So if we go to my Emotep, who, gosh bless, there's just so many commanders, it's hard to find them. He does this area of effect, increasing their damage taken by 30%. And when he's the secondary commander, those targets gain 50 less rage per second for 3 seconds. That is why he's good in Canyon. Yeah, he stays at S tier for Canyon for sure, right? And that effect is why he's actually super powerful. It does take his expertise skill, maxing all his other skills to kind of make that happen. But that's when his power level really jumps up, is with that rage reduction. The second skill is pretty good. 30% of the stats is like really awesome. Health for your city is good, okay? And then the fourth skill over here, when attacked, 10% chance of inflicting a debuff on the target, making them reduce their skill image by 15%. Pretty cool. But like, you know, even in Canyon, you're not really benefiting from this because your archers shouldn't really be in the front line. He's not really tanky enough to be kind of a frontline commander. It's very weird, okay? You can find some weird things to do with him, with like maybe with Joan in the front line. I don't know. If he had a better commander to pair with, I think he would be way more interesting, all right? So if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, throw a like on here, consider subscribing. I feel like we covered a lot of really good ground today on kind of what are the best epics in Rise of Kingdoms. Of course, if you want some of those other videos I referenced earlier, I'll have a card in the end screen for those 2 videos, which includes, by the way, how to make your siege units absolutely correct in Canyon. Don't do this in the open field, but it's really interesting to see how you can do this in Sunset Canyon.